So I started with Natural Resources and Mines Department of Lands back in 1994, and we were involved in invasive species management throughout Queensland. I moved around a lot of places, central Queensland, and then came to Brisbane in a senior policy position. I've always been involved in invasive species management: locusts, mice, rats, weeds, and a bit of fire ants. Yep. So, as you know, I'm going over some old ground here for a lot of people, but they were first detected in Queensland in 2001. Fire ants, that is, but word is they've been here for 10, 15 years before that, which is a real worry. How something like that could be here for 10 to 15 years before that. By shipping containers they think out of South America, we're not quite sure, in the Port of Brisbane. And even back then, the eradication program was managed by the state government. They had they formed, I remember it was panic stations, because this pest had caused havoc around the world in a lot of places. And they put together a national agreement where the states and territories put in 50%, and then the feds put in the other 50% of the money. And remember, that only occurs because it's an eradication program through a national agreement. And since 2001, they spread from the initial 40,000 hectares, which was quite an area. If you think what 40,000 hectares is, it's quite a big area, up to, and it's even spread past 850,000, it's up to about 880,000 hectares. So that's not high density throughout. Some areas, like South Brisbane's very high density in nests. Some areas haven't got hardly any nests at all. The big worry is outside of this main population hub infestation is where they are that we don't know about still. Yep. And this is the latest mapping. You see, despite 23 years, and I think it's up to $1.2 billion of taxpayers' money, the net population has not reduced, in fact, it's increased. They've had a good go at it and tried to force it back. But these are really good pests. They're super pests. And so you see the treatment area, it's basically like they're trying to horseshoe them in, bring them in like a mob of wild cattle. So you've got that surveillance, that blue line around the outer edge, which is surveillance. That's where they do get out and about, look for them. Through a lot of different, like on the air, sniffer dogs, ground inspections, and then you've got that other line, that orangey red line, which is the eradication zone. And that's where they do eradication activities. And then beyond that, you've got the full suppression zone, where you've got a combination of high density nest area to the south, and it varies. But that's a massive area. Yep. So where are we out in... This is a new slide you put in there, mate. Well, that's okay. Yeah, that's right, it has grown. And you know why it's grown? Because there's so much movement. There's so much they call vectors. We're a vector for fire ant spread, where we move pot plants around, move soil around, mulch, or when you look at a lot of the housing development where it's occurred, that's where there's a lot of fire ants. They love disturbed area. Just like weeds and that, they love where soil's fresh, and that's where you see a lot of fire ants outbreaks. And so you've got a lot of machinery, soil moving around those areas, and that's how it's spread. They've exploded over that time. Yep. So this is the most important slide that you'll see tonight, and it's actually called the PETA, Prevention, Eradication, Containment and Asset Management. So along the bottom line axis, it's time, and up the side is area occupied. So, and this, you can use this for the management of every invasive species, not just fire ant. And there's different graphs, but they're all got the same axis. So, prevention. We should have did everything possible to try and prevent fire ants getting in here before we knew that they would spread across 40,000 hectares. That's how we have as many containers that we try to inspect as possible, as the budget allows. the best return on investment is spending the money in trying to keep the pest out. Trying to keep it out of Australia. That's why we want strong biosecurity systems. So we're not even let it coming in. But once it does come in, and you'll see that little green arrow there, then you have an eradication phase. And that is where we throw everything at it. You can imagine everything that we've got in the cupboard, we try and throw out of it. Because, and that's, there's certain activities you do in that eradication period. Like you use all resources possible, you go and try and find, if you find a nest, like you say, well, how did it get there? You do your trace back. What brought depth there? Was it spread here by saw, or was it spread here by a person moving a pot plant? Stuff like that. So that is where the state government and all the other states think this program is at. They're still working in that eradication phase after 20 odd years. They're still there. They still think that they can eradicate every single fire ant across 880,000 hectares. That's what they're trying to achieve. And that is why you see a lot of angst in the community, because they're still pushing hard to try and eradicate. But remember, at the moment, they're only eradicating around that outer rim, that 10k wide, I think it is, that outer rim. But in that middle zone, the suppression zone, well, it's pretty ad hoc. I've got a suppression team, but I've seen people wait 6 months. 6 months, I've seen people report and not even get any action. That's what's happening. So then you move into a containment phase. When the pest has moved out and they can't control it, it starts to spread, and the population increases. And as the population increases, the impacts increase. So we move into the containment phase, and they try, and really this is what this program is now, I believe. We're in that containment phase. They're trying to contain it. There's even a map the state government's put out where they've said, well, if we didn't spend all this money, it'd be such a lot more area that's spread and infested. Well, that's true. They have contained the pest after all these years. And then in containment, you really try and stem them in and not let them jump over that area. And remember, the thing about containment, and we've got to accept this in the Brisbane area, is that containment is forever. We will never get rid of fire ants from the southeast corner. We have to accept that as a community. Never been done in the world, and it's never been done. They've tried to. We're good at containing them, but we will never eradicate them. And then when it moves past the containment stage, you get this asset-based protection, and that's where who knows what lantana looks like. Yeah? It's endemic. We're never going to eradicate lantana roll. Yeah. So fire ants aren't there yet. They're not at that stage yet. I still think they're out within that containment, pushing up on the outer edge containment in some areas. Because if they were an endemic, that'd be across Australia. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to let this pest get across Australia. It will have impacts. We're going to do our best we can to contain it. But we've got to be realistic. And that's why I've said this is a reality check. That we will never eradicate them. But remember, the funding stops from all the other states and the feds when it is no longer an eradication project. That is why after all these years and that massive spread, they're still calling it an eradication project. It's not, but look, beyond that, they have eradicated fire ants out of this high density zone. Gladstone, Perth, Sydney, there's a few spots down south where they're going hard to eradicate it, over the border, Liddell, Willmott. So it is possible to eradicate fire ants when they're just discovered. Remember back to that graph, the initial let's jump on it. But they were never going to eradicate it, even at the 40,000 hectare stage. They should have stemmed them in hard and tried to contain them. And remember, when you try and contain something, they call it the goose effect in biosecurity, where it can always jump over the containment zone. So you've always got to be ready to jump on it. And that's what we're going to have to do forever. So we're going to have to get used as a community to manage fire ants forever. So the current government-led approach, it is pretty heavy-handed, let's be honest. I've done compliance activities with landowners. I know a guy, this mad guy when I used to live in England and work for the Far North Coast County Council. This guy wrote to me and said, well, I'm going to go over. He's a real mad guy. He loves his plants, exotic plants. He was swallowing exotic fruit overseas that was illegal to bring into Australia, and bring the seeds through in his stomach, do the business and clean them out. It's true. So I was involved in a project where he got frisk searched at the airport and searched really well, and then we searched his property as well. So because that's nearly like biological terrorism. So there's people out there that do that type of stuff, believe me. So this is why you're seeing the heavy-handed compliance activities that the Department of Primary Industry is handing out, because they still think they're in this eradication program. And really that's leading to disengaging and discontent and fear of reporting. If you're going to be made to treat your property and you don't have much say in what it's treated with, it's all about fines and sections of this, sections of that. And don't get me wrong, we've all got a biosecurity responsibility. We've all got a role to treat pests and to stop pest spreading. There's a lot of cost shifting to local government and the community as that mass of fire ants starts to spread, and they're trying to hang on to the best they can in form and resemblance of control, because it is a massive job. You imagine 880,000 hectares of ants they're trying to control, and all those different vectors and spread pathways trying to jump and get out and move them. And one of the things I've noticed is they're very disrespectful of private property rights. Your private property. Within the bounds of the law, you should be able to do what you want on your private property. And if someone's going to go and treat your place, well, you should have a bit of choice of what they're treating it with, when they're treating it, how they're treating it, or you might want to treat it yourself. And there's slow response times. And a lot of that is poor coordination, poor planning, and it's just because of the massive area as well. They can't get everywhere. There's a lack of transparency. You'll notice when government, and they've done this for as long as I can remember, the state government, they like saying how many tonnes of bait they've put out, how many inspections they've done, how many properties they've inspected. They like talking about outputs, but they never talk about the percentage gain towards eradication, do they? No. How quick, what measurement, what report are they giving us of how they're going and achieving that eradication goal back to the Pepper curve? Because it's easy to report on outputs, and it sounds really good. So many properties inspected, so many tonnes of bait used, we're doing great things. But we really don't know how they're going and progressing towards eradication. So that lack of transparency. And if you think of it, in reality it's a containment program. We should have some more choice, because when you look at the community, there's people in every community, and I've found this myself with biosecurity all my life, that people that don't mind what chemicals used on their place, as long as you kill that damn pest, you just get in and kill it. But there's people that want to do things naturally and use natural products, and that's okay too. And when a pest gets to this stage, you should have those options, and those options are out there. Look at, where's Trevor Hop? Here's Trev. Look at that big flash machine he's got. What do you call that machine, Trev?
Fire ant soup maker.
Fire ant soup maker, turns her into soup. And that's proven technology overseas too. It's backed up by the, what university is it, Trev?
University of Florida.
So it's not just something Trev's dreamed up. It actually works and can give an alternative treatment option for people who don't want chemical use. Yep. So in the biosecurity field, one of the principles of biosecurity is you've got to collaborate with the community. You've got to build ownership of the community to that pest issue. Yeah? You've got to bring the community with you. And the department hasn't done a bad job in some respects, but in other respects they've let you down. Community-led and community-driven syndicates are grassroots initiatives where the communities take the lead in managing the pest. You leverage local knowledge, resources, the networks, and it's culturally sensitive. It takes note, well, if you don't want to use full-on toxic chemical or chemical, you might want to use a natural alternative where you can. It takes in that spectrum, which it should. Yep. This is a flash diagram I did up trying to kind of visualise what it is. So in a community-led program, you've got, and before I go on to this flash diagram, there's syndicates already established for other pest species that have worked. Some syndicates have worked for over 100 years that the community is driven. And that's for, wild dog syndicates out west, the control of wild dogs. You've got syndicates for the control of locusts. You've got syndicates for the control of weeds, for feral pigs. It's nothing new in the field of biosecurity and pest management generally. So you've got state government takes a little bit of step back, but they're still involved because they're like the Chief Executive Officer of Biosecurity in Queensland. So they've got oversight and they give resources to local governments. Because local governments have these things called under the Act, a biosecurity management plan. They've got a responsibility and obligation to manage declared animal and plant species that are declared under the Biosecurity Act. And on the right side, you've got local community takes the lead for the management on private properties. On your own land, you take the lead for managing fire ants on your own land. Just like you would with lantana, fireweed, and the other pests. Now, on this side, you've got local government on the right, down the bottom. And local governments are the closest level of government to the people. Yeah? And so, you usually have a lot of interface with your local government. So in the syndicates I've seen, they provide a lot of support, like administration support, a lot of data support. They might even try and coordinate some of the local pest controllers for you. And then you've got management services, so provision of treatment, like you might have someone like a church set up, or you might have professional pest controllers that you can call on in the syndicate. Because not everyone has the time to go and do their own fire ants, do they? So they can call on a management service, a provision of treatment for control. And so really that sweet spot in the middle is where you want to be, is where the community feels engaged and there's collaboration with all those other stakeholders. So you don't feel that real top-down approach from government, do it this way or we're going to arrest you. Do it this way or we're going to give you a $14,000 fine. That type of stuff. So it takes that load off. But remember, the state government still thinks it's an eradication project. We've got to convince them that it's not an eradication project. It's a containment project. And we need them to look at trialling these things. Start. Yep. So the model. So representation is dominated by community members. And I'm just going on what other syndicates that I've seen around Australia are. Local government usually provides admin, coordination and logistical support. State provides funding directly to local governments in line with their biosecurity plans. So some biosecurity plans under local governments I've seen have syndicates attached to them. They might be for wild dogs, might be for rabbits, might be for pigs, might be for certain weeds. It can be for fire ants as well in certain areas. State and local governments are responsible for the management of their own lands, and so they should be. Our highways, our schools, our roadways, local, state, our parks, local government, state government should be. It's their land, they're responsible for it, get in and do it. Yep. So what's the benefits of a syndicate? What I've seen you know, a lot of people in the community look out for each other. If the community's connected, they know what's going on. You know, you've got that informal community network that happens with your mate, so-and-so knows so-and-so. You know, mate's got fire ants over there, he's done a good job. You know, and that's what really drives increased participation and ownership is the key for the management of any pest species. People feel more connected to the outcomes instead of government doing all the work. Government are pretty inefficient. Have you noticed that? They are, huh? To me, it's a libertarian coming with our ears. I think we've got a bit too much government at the moment. Getting in the way, telling us what to do, what to say. I won't go down that path. So when people feel more connected to the outcomes in their community, they are more likely to stay engaged and maintain control with the measures over the long time, because that's what we want. Because remember, back to that invasion curve, containment is forever. So we've got to set ourselves up with mechanisms where we keep on suppressing fire ants forever. And that's why we've got to start doing this. Because we've got to work out the right mechanism of how we're going to manage fire ants so they don't take over our lives and start to really impact our lives. Yeah? And so we've got to get ready to do it. We should be practicing how to do this now. Because they're not going to go away. We've got to keep suppressing them. Yep. Cost efficiency, like I said before, I think in a lot of areas the community can do it a lot cheaper than what the government does it. There's better coordination, right? Look at some of the tree care groups, the land care groups that do a lot of environmental work. In a way, there's a lot of good community groups, Lions, Rotary. You know, the community is networked across a lot of things. We've got SES groups, rural bushfire brigades, all that kind of stuff. You know how to do stuff. The community knows how to lead and do best. Yep. Social cohesion. So people not everyone has got the time to be involved. I'm not saying everyone has to, but you might want to be involved, and you might say, well, my place, I'm just going to, it's great that you've got a syndicate, if I work full time, I'm just going to get a pest controller in, but it's part of the program that the syndicate's involved in. So people have varying degrees. The regulations, you know, there's going to be less compliance. We're going to save the government money. So they're not having coppers coming around and arresting people or threatening you with bits of paper. You're going to feel that you're more in control. Yep. It's adaptable and flexible. It's more flexible than the bloated bureaucracies we find ourselves with in Queensland at this time. They can quickly adapt. Like if you know, I don't know this area very well, like Central Creek, you might have a flood, and you might have an increased spread of fire ants that, you know, little bugs grab together and they float along on rafts. And they might come to a new area which has been treated by the city before. Well, you can rearrange and get to that and treat it as a community quicker, or get the pest controllers in, get someone like. Again, it doesn't have to be chemical. There are effective ways to treat isolated nests. Yep. Oh, sorry, could you just go back up just this one? Yeah, so ecologic is a sound solution. So community members are more often motivated to use environmentally friendly and sustainable methods of pest control to protect local biodiversity. You just think of the amount of chemical that's being put on land that's treated 6 times every 2 years over the last 20 odd years. In a lot of chemical, hey? Sure, 1 or 2 treatments might have an impact, but when you're doing it 20 years, no matter how small the toxicity of that chemical is, it's going to have some impact. And no one's done a study of what that's going to look like after 20 years. Remember? So we took the time, and that impact of that Pecker curve, that's where eradication is so important. I don't mind using chemical if it's to eradicate something and you don't have to use much, but the more a pest spreads, yes, you've got to use so much more chemical. So look at the amount of chemical they're using because they've got to look 880,000 hectares, mate. That's a lot. So the time for that mass chemical use is, you know, it's out, it's gone, that window's closed because the pests spread so far. The government to do it out of the air and everything. That's not to say I don't agree with a real jump on everything up outside the containment zone, like the stuff they found at North Arm and that. We should be jumping on that quickly because that's a new area. We have got the potential to eradicate that. Yep. Knowledge sharing and capacity building. The more we use syndicates, the more we can share what works and what doesn't work. What works over here might work over there. You've got different landholders, you've got different types of properties, different terrains. We'll build up that expertise over the years through syndicate developments to actually get more best practice. That's what we're going to need. Improved monitoring and early detection. So in a community, you'll know more about where the pests are because you can have data sets that local government can provide. If you feed information in, local governments can provide you that information. It does work with other syndicates that I've been involved in. They have really good mapping. You'll know exactly where the pests are, the fire ants are, and aren't in the Sanford area if you've got good active community syndicates. Yep. So the benefits again, it's grassroots approach, not top down. People in Australia are just sick of the top-down authority and they want to have more control of what's going in their lives every day. It's collaborative, so we're still working with the state. We still love you guys. We're still working with the local governments because they're our local governments, you know, we interact with them every day. But it puts the community more in control. Because a lot of people in the community don't feel that much ownership. Engagement, ownership and empowerment. Respect, this is a big one, it respects individual differences. And that's what's not going on now. And it respects your property rights. Because it's your property. That's what you worked for all your life. That's the legacy you want to leave your kids. You should have more control and more say what happens on your property, yeah? Yep. Unfortunately, there's some challenges. Political leadership to adopt a more collaborative, community-driven model rather than a top-down approach. We've got to get those in power to accept that, to even look and trial different models, rather than we're just going to keep what we're doing for the last 20-odd years. State government provision of program dollars to local government and communities. State government likes hanging on to the money. Is power. They don't like giving it to communities and local governments. There has been some local governments that have complained already. They get responsibility from the state government, but they don't get any of this with it. That stays with the state. So there's got to be some letting go of funding to give it to community syndicates and local government. This is a big one. Acceptance by authorities that focus of the program is one of ongoing containment and suppression, not eradication. To move them out of that eradication phase to one of containment. That's a really big one. Because, you know, they like using the eradication word, don't they? Every second word they talk about the new eradication, because it sounds fancy. It sounds like they're going to win. Well, I'm here to say we're not going to eradicate fire ants. And it's not just me saying it, there is a heap of other experts saying the same thing. It's politically dangerous to admit failure though, but it's time they admit that they need a different approach. We've got to set ourselves up for the long-term management of fire ants. Yep. So that's it. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Jim. So I want you to know that Jim Willmott is actually a biosecurity officer and does know biosecurity, so everything he has, all that information he has just given you is actual fact. Amazing. Jim's also a Libertarian candidate for the Senate and set up Property Rights Australia. Now that is a very important thing that you need to take away with you, property rights. We're not here to talk about it tonight, but if you ever have any questions about your property rights, feel free to call Jim Willmott because he will embrace you with everything you need to know in regard to it.